what would you do?
Now it's your turn.
Welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about the film Handling the Undead. On a hot summer day in Oslo, the dead mysteriously awaken and 3 families are thrown into chaos when their deceased loved ones come back to them. Who are they and what do they want? A family is faced with the mother's reawakening before they have even mourned her death after a car accident. An elderly woman gets the love of her life back the same day she buried her. A grandfather rescues his grandchild from the graveside in a desperate attempt to get his daughter out of her depression. Handling the Undead is a drama with elements of horror about 3 families, a story about grief and loss, then about hope and understanding of what we can't comprehend or control.
What the hell did I just watch?
Yeah, this was marketed as a zombie movie unlike any you will ever see.
Well, that must be why Scott told me I'm going to have to do this episode. It deals with zombies, so obviously I'm the guy that's going to know more about zombies than him.
Okay, since our audience doesn't know who you are, and I wasn't aware that you were going to bomb this.
Well, I told you it was going to be groundbreaking.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, guys, just so you know, I do another podcast called Fantasy Football Monsters. My name's Jimmy. Scott made me go to this movie and watch it, and he said, you're going to have to do the show because I don't know anything about zombies. So here I am.
Yeah, so Jimmy, in case anyone's wondering a little bit more about Jimmy is a zombie.
Jimmy's a zombie, yes.
Yes, and
he got the T virus, and now he's a zombie.
Yeah, and he likes karaoke.
Why am I talking in the whatever person is, third person, second person? Something. I'm a zombie. I don't know grammar.
Yeah. So Jimmy is a colorful character. So welcome, Jimmy.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice. It's nice to finally make your acquaintance, Amber. I've heard plenty about you, but I've never actually met you.
Yeah. The pleasure is all yours, Jimmy. So, what did you think about this very provocative film?
Well, I haven't always been a zombie.
That's true. Most people haven't.
I used to watch The Walking Dead, and this kind of felt like if The Walking Dead took a whole bottle of Ambien and then they played it because it was slow.
That's true. It was a very slow film. Definitely, they took a very fascinating premise of what would you do if you got your loved ones back, but then your loved ones are a little bit off. But it was very slow moving. It was a foreign film, so there were subtitles, but I feel like we went days at a time between reading. There was just long theatrical moments of, driving or preparing food or watching fans.
It was monotonous as hell.
Yeah, it was a very slow film, and it's unfortunate because the trailer was really interesting and the premise was fascinating because in this movie, again, Jimmy, as I suspect Scott has told you, we're not a movie review show, so we're not going to go into the nuances of how painfully slow this film was.
That's good, because I really don't want to have to relive that again.
Yeah, no one does. But the premise of your loved one comes back, they're slightly off, and that we learn over the film, again, we do lots of spoilers here, Jimmy, so, we drop bombs of what happens, so we ruin films for people. Not only is your loved one slightly off, they actually might be a little violent because, again, spoiler drop out here. If you want to see the film, put us on pause, come back and finish the episode when you're done.
Don't. We're doing you a favor by spoiling it, I assure you.
So one of the undead murders her son's rabbit that he just got on his birthday. So on his birthday,
that was pretty dark, and
the couple, and she was feeding her, and she went to put something in her mouth, and the lady snapped at her, and you're like, oh, okay, well that's alarming. But more alarming was later in the film where the undead lover, took a bite out of her face and killed her.
Yeah, we tend to do that. So you have to understand that I'm pretty pro-zombie at this point, being as I have no choice. And it's not that we want to be violent. It's not. I try to be peace-loving. The problem is brains. We need them.
Yes, and these people, the one undead lady, she didn't appear to eat the brain of her a live loved one, but she certainly did take a bite of her face.
She just hadn't gotten to it yet. She was a new zombie. Trust me, them new zombies, they don't understand right away that they need brain. Like, it's not exactly something that immediately comes to brain. There's not a zombie handbook that you pick up that goes, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to eat brains from now on. You eventually
really
figure it out.
There should be. There should be.
So she was going for the face. Trust me, if we kept going, it would have gotten gruesome up in there.
Okay, well, that's actually really helpful to know, Jimmy. So what we do here is we talk about what would you do if certain things happened to you in real life that happened in the movie. And considering your occupation as a zombie, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go.
Just so we are clear here, I work in a science lab. That is my occupation. I'm just a zombie. That's who I am as a person.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for clarifying that for me and our audience. So Jimmy, and again, pretend you're not undead for a moment. Pretend that you are alive and well, okay?
Well, I don't know if I was ever well, but I'll pretend that I was alive.
Okay, perfect. So pretend that you're alive, and all of a sudden, whoever was near and dear to you who has just passed came back to you. You all of a sudden have your wife or your sister or your mother or your best friend or whoever it might be, you have them back. Now, they're kind of a shell of who they were. They don't really communicate, and they're not active and full of personality, but they're there.
We don't communicate real well, so I understand that part.
How would you feel? Because sometimes just the presence of the person that you've lost that keeps you, I don't know, just the presence alone sometimes is a gift, I would think. So
if I'm taking on like a human form here, I mean, we're kind of assuming that these people have never seen zombies. They don't really know what zombies are all about. So when they see their loved ones come back, they're obviously confused. They don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
They just know that their loved one's there. And maybe they're a little off, clearly a little off. But I'd rather have my loved one there a little off than not have them there at all.
yeah.
So I know Scott likes to do this thing on what would you do, where he tries to figure out what he would do different from the main characters. But the truth is I don't think there was a lot different you'd have to do. Now, maybe if you were more educated on zombies and our culture, you might have known that they eventually were going to go for your fucking brains. But they didn't. They didn't know the warning signs, so not knowing that, I would have acted the same way as them. I would have welcomed them in and obviously tried to take care of them as much as possible.
Yeah, and a couple of the two women, the alive lady, she was...
She was only barely alive, honestly. She was just a little more alive than the zombie.
She was elderly, but she was still perfectly there, Jimmy.
Tomato.
Yeah, no, she was still fine. Anyway, so, they went to bed and she curled up and snuggled with her and they held hands, and you could tell that she was just happy to take care of her.
You are so grateful for anything you can get, no matter how small. So yeah, I completely understand everything that she was doing, and like even the little things about holding her hand and laying there in bed, even though she wasn't reciprocating much, she was reciprocating as much as a newly formed zombie could.
Yeah. And to be clear, too, that grief process certainly hadn't played out. She had actually just said goodbye to her at the funeral home that day.
Was it that day?
It was that day.
I kind of lost track of days in there. I kind of felt like that might have been longer than just that.
No, it was that day.
Well, hell, okay, she ain't gone through the grief process.
Yeah, but it was... The one thing that struck me is that none of the characters screamed or were appalled or like, oh my gosh, what are you doing in my kitchen? The couple we're talking about, the zombie woman managed to find her way back to the house and came to the house. The mom who murdered the rabbit was still in the hospital. And then there was a third family where...
there was a little grave digging action going on there.
Exactly. The grandpa had dug up his grandchild, and his daughter was going through depression and was terribly upset that her son had died. So the grandfather dug up the child. Now, the one thing that wasn't clear is I thought the grandpa might have made all this happen, but again, that we're getting into the nuances of the movie.
There was a lot of questions we didn't have answers there.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I want to say thank you on behalf of the zombie community to that grandpa, because when we are buried in a coffin 6 feet under, it's pretty hard to get out. We pretty much need someone who's going to help us. So thank you, Grandpa. I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's always nice to have some zombie lovers out there. So if your loved one, who was again kind of in a vegetative state, then started to turn on you or just act violent or unpredictable, at that point I'd be scared.
Well, see, it's interesting because we were seeing 3 different stories going on there of 3 different zombies, and we saw them all basically start to get violent about the same time.
Except for the little boy.
Well, the little boy nibbled on her shoulder right near the end. I don't know if you caught that.
Yes.
He was starting to figure out that he needed brains.
Yeah. And there was one random zombie that came looking in the window of the woman. And
what the
grandpa.
fuck was that? I don't get that guy.
I
Where'd he come from?
I got the impression that maybe that was to show that there were more undead, more zombie people who had come back than just the 3 families we were seeing.
Trust me, if there's one thing I can tell you, there are 2 things that you never expect. One is the Spanish Inquisition, and the other one is the zombie apocalypse.
You know, I hadn't really thought about that, Jimmy, but I think you're right on that one. If you were a human and your vegetative loved one started nibbling on your face or biting at your hands or murdering your bunnies, what would you do? Because obviously they're dependent on you because they are in that impaired state.
Well, that one chick did look too impaired when she was strangling Mr. Fluffers or whatever the hell his name was.
Yeah, she did appear very strong. That's a good point.
Yeah, he was trying to pull her hands apart, and she was having none of it because it might have been just a bunny, but there was still some brain in there. So when we focus in on that, we focus in on that. So, yeah, clearly she was not nearly as impaired as you might have thought, as she had superhuman strength.
That's true. Okay, so let's look at the female couple then.
Yes.
So
female couple.
So when the zombie lover, the lover who was a zombie, bit at her when she was being fed, like that was alarming to me. That would have been kind of like, oh, okay, what's that about? That would have frightened me a little bit.
I think we were partially frightened because of the music they played in the background. Yeah, she took a bite. She just took a bigger bite than you might expect. If you take the background music out of that thing, it's maybe a little bit. But honestly, if I'm feeding her, I'm just happy to see the signs of life. I'm happy to see that she's actually responding. Now, it was a little weird. And again, because we know this was a movie and there was some music in the background telling us that we were supposed to be scared of that. Obviously, that's going to be us getting freaked out a little bit. But I think in the real world, if I'm a human, I'm seeing that as a sign of life. Now, that said, I might still keep it in the back of my brain that bitch almost bit my fingers off.
Yeah. I can see your point, Jimmy. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. So Jimmy, what were your thoughts? What would you do if you were in the position of some of these characters, or even maybe in the position of the zombies?
Well, let me tell you, I can't really actually tell you much about the zombies at this point, because when you're a new zombie, it's basically like you're a baby. You don't know what the hell's going on. You can't really fend for yourself. You look like you are fully formed, but really you're just trying to figure out what the hell. And there's no one shoving a bottle in your mouth. It's not like, here's your brain bottle. No, you got to figure that out for your own. So from a zombie perspective, they are basically newborns figuring that all out. So they were doing what they needed to. From the human perspective, and I can take the human perspective on this. Mm-hmm. I'm welcoming everyone in, but I'm not sure what the hell that chick did right at the end, though. Like that seemed like some from some zombie side shit.
So what happened at the end, for the those of you who are still here with us listening, is the
You
mother
better be here. I'll find you.
the mother who had her son come back after she saw the zombie at their window, who actually killed her father. When the father went out to scare the zombie away, the zombie murdered her dad.
The zombies have rights. He hit him.
That's true. You're right.
He smacked him first.
The father/grandfather did actually take the first swing. That's
That
a
guy
good
was
point,
kind of
Jimmy.
a dumbass. Let's be honest here. When the girl's like, we need to take him to the hospital, and he's like, no, we just need family. You shut the fuck up. You don't know that you need to take him. Your family ain't going to do nothing. If you're in that position, you take him to the hospital.
Well, he was dead. I think the whole point is that he had dug up the kid, and the kid obviously looked really weird. If you're going to the hospital, they're probably not going to get that kid back.
Well, I get that from that perspective, but here's the thing. You're not expecting zombie. You're thinking coma.
That's true.
You're thinking he was in some form of a coma.
Well, they know he died. There would be a record of death and burial and whatnot. So, I don't think they're going to think he's just sick. They're going to think something's wrong, or you did something, or...
If you're not knowing that there's zombies around, and all of a sudden someone who was dead is up and walking around, are you going to assume that maybe there was a screw up at the hospital and they weren't really dead, or that zombies exist and your loved one randomly became one? Because let me tell you, from the real world perspective, it's the former, not the latter.
That's a really good point, Jimmy. So back to where we were going before we went down this tangent is, so the mom sees her dad murdered by the zombie, and she and her...
Self-defense.
Yes, I agree with you, actually, on that one, Jimmy. So she and her zombie son run... Well, I shouldn't say they run to
row your boat.
She is carrying her boy because he's never really been able to move, or he has not been high functioning or even mild functioning. So she carries him to a boat, and they use the boat to flee. And that's when, as you mentioned earlier, the little boy kind of bites at her shoulder, and then they row off. And then she proceeds, after they get far enough away, to then place her son in the water and say, I love you, goodbye, we'll see each other soon. So I think she realized by seeing the zombie killer dad what her son might be capable of.
I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
From your knowledge of zombies,
which is limited, admittedly,
do you think drowning is a way that you take care of zombies? Because let me tell you, it's not.
Well,
matter of fact, that first full form zombie, I may remind you, he actually came out of that same lake.
Okay.
All she did was just give him further to walk. That's it.
Well, as you said, if people's minds wouldn't go to zombies, they're probably not schooled on the best way to kill a zombie.
Well, if they're not, I don't know. I'm not sure that's how I'm
like
honest.
you said, there's not a rule book.
You got to do better than drowning. I'm sorry. If you're going to take care of someone like that, I'd chop their head off personally.
Well,
I'd separate their head from their body.
That might be effective. I think that mom might have had a hard time decapitating her beloved son that she was so depressed over losing. But we did see the water, pretty big amount of water around the boat, and it didn't seem like there was any bubbles or the little boy coming up anywhere. So, maybe he was young enough and had small lungs, and that was enough to take him out. I don't know, Jimmy.
It didn't take him out.
Okay.
So Amber, do you have any final thoughts on this movie?
I guess, well, my final thought would be when it's Scott coming back.
Oh, he'll probably be back for the next one. He just said, quote, I can't.
Well, and you are a very logical substitute. So,
well, yes, obviously it's a zombie movie. You're gonna bring in the expert on zombies.
Yes. Thank you so much for bringing the zombie point of view to this episode, Jimmy. It has been fun.
Well, that's fine. But now we're doing karaoke, right?
Oh, yes. I've heard you do I'm Just Ken.
Well, yeah, I'd do that, but I'm just screwing with you. I know where there's no karaoke here. This is where we have to end the episode, so.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.